Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and I've got an exciting new sponsor to talk about today in NevGold. They are in the Idaho area that is really heating up because of the discovery that Hercules Silver has made in the area. Shortly after they announced their discovery hole, Barrick Gold has put a bunch of money into the company on 3 different occasions. In fact, they were buying stock before they did a private placement. Then they did a private placement, and then they bought warrants. So they've taken a very keen interest and given millions of dollars to Hercules Silver. But prior to that, NevGold had been in the area for quite some time and really hit the ground running once that news release went out about the discovery. So we're going to talk about all that with Brandon Bonifacio. Brandon, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Alan. Great to be here.
So in a nutshell, Hercules has caught the imagination of the exploration investor world, as well as through the attention of Barrick Gold. And this must have felt like something great fell right into your lap.
Definitely. I think that's a great way to explain it, Alan. I mean, we were the only other exploration / mining company in Washington County, Idaho, in that western part of the state. And we were very fortunate to have the right operating infrastructure, the right geological knowledge, the right land groups we were already working with. And, sometimes you are in the right place at the right time, but it still takes the foresight to walk through the door. And I think that's exactly what we did here. And when you look at the NevGold platform, we still have our resource or near-term resource stage projects in Idaho and in Nevada, 2 of the best jurisdictions in the world. But as an owner of the business myself, I think it's always in our DNA to create value for shareholders. And I think that's exactly what we did here with the Zeus Project, which is what we're calling it.
And that's a great way to look at things because, and one of the advantages of being a junior exploration company is that you can act fast. And upon Hercules Silver making the discovery hole announcement, within a very short period of time, you guys were out there staking ground.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? We even started doing some of the upfront work beforehand. So it was one of those things where there's only a couple small towns in that part of Idaho, and it's the same coffee shops, the same restaurants. And, it started to feel like there was a lot more activity picking up. And we had a great relationship already with the Idaho Geological Survey. They've been a great supporter of ours at our Nutmeg Mountain project. So we had access to a few pieces of data or information that many others probably wouldn't have. And we were able to just get in the field and spend time with our extremely strong technical team and obviously take advantage of the situation. And I think when we start to put out more news alongside with what we've released this morning, I think it's going to show why we're so excited, because it has all the same geological characteristics, signatures, structures as the Hercules project, which is a very, very fortunate position to be in.
Yeah, that's the images that you shared in your news releases where it really caught my attention, because being there for so long, and if a new area play starts developing, it does take some time to sort of get up to speed on the geology and to know where to target your staking. And in Idaho, they use the old-fashioned post staking. So it takes a bit of time to get up and running there. But as I said earlier, you guys hit the ground running and you went into areas that had the same kind of geology, same kind of structural story, and same history of mining in that area to focus your acquisition of the Zeus property.
Exactly. And maybe that's a good segue into bringing up one of the maps, and I can flip through it. So what's happened in this area, the Hercules project and where that discovery was made was approximately 20 kilometers to the north. But there's another window of this intrusive where you're seeing the right Jurassic and Triassic units. this area was actually called the Mineral District. Mineral was a past producing copper district. In this little valley here, if you can follow my cursor, there's actually old remnants of a smelter. So you had all the right ingredients and signatures, and there was the ability to consolidate what is now a over 25 square kilometer or close to 5,000 acre land package, which is a very consolidated strategic piece of ground in the district. And I think when you're looking at what Mineral has, there's been some very good work done by past operators there, and it looks like it has all the same elements as Hercules. And I think us wrapping them to the north, the east, and the south,
Yeah, because
I
that
think
blue package, their mineral project is Hercules Silver.
exactly.
Got it. And I've been able to do a lot of homework on Hercules Silver because the same day that they made that announcement was the same day that I initiated coverage on October the 10th, when their stock was trading at about 60 cents a share. So it's been a heck of a good pick for me. And then, when I get my teeth into something, I do a lot of homework. And what I really noticed about their main discovery, the Hercules project, was that there are some key structures that seem to be associated with that mineralization. And you actually have a map here that shows a lot of the past production that happened down at Mineral Project and Zeus Project. Correct?
I do, yes. Yeah, no, and I think when you're looking at this little pocket here, there was a number of those historical mine workings or even historical drill holes. So I think as we evolve the story, we're obviously compiling a lot of that historical data, Allan. So when that data compilation is done, we will have subsequent news releases out. But I do think it's looking like it has many of those same structures and signatures as the Hercules project.
Well, actually, you can see one of the faults going right through the Mineral Project and onto Zeus. And that's very similar to what they see at Hercules Project on the west side of the claims where they've made the discovery. There's
Exactly.
cross-cutting structures that are in close proximity to where they made that discovery. And I think what you're going to see is that when they drill again, that could very well be the center of the system, because you need these structures give you indication of where the mineralization came up and broke up the rocks, if you will.
Exactly. And the one thing I would say about Mineral, all of the surface geology has effectively been completed on it. We were fortunate because the nuances related to the land situation in Western Idaho, and you've mentioned a few of the factors, but if I were to mention all of them, it would probably take me half an hour. It is a very complex land situation in this belt here. We were able to effectively come in and pick up the ground that for certain reasons was not really worked on as much previously. But when you look at Mineral and you follow some of the trends that they've discovered with surface mapping, soil and rock chip grids, and some of the IP work that was done previously by Newmont, there is a massive alteration system at Mineral. I think the one thing that I would say, and we were pretty clear about highlighting it in the news release, we saw some very important signatures that you would like to see it surface with respect to how large the footprint was, some of the superficial expressions that you like to see with this type of system. So we're very encouraged about how big it actually was when you started walking what we've staked this entire Zeus project, which is a compiled sort of 25 square kilometers now. And I think when you look at Mineral and Zeus together, this is one much larger system at hand.
And what Brandon is describing there for the non-geologist out there is when you go into an area and you see a large alteration, basically when the fluids that carry the minerals make their way to surface, they interact with the country rock. And this chemically alters that country rock. So you can see alteration. And when you have a big footprint of alteration, it's also a sign that you have a big system below that caused all that alteration. So that's a very good sign that you didn't just stake moose pasture there, Brandon.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, the other interesting part here, Alan, kind of a bit more of a philosophical comment, and this is actually a good little figure as well. You can see where our Oxide heap leach gold project is. The gold belt is a little bit more northwest to southeast, where this copper belt really comes all the way up North America because of the structural setting that evolved over many, many millennials. So I think when you look at what we have here, it's the tail end of that copper belt. And I'll flip because I think it's important to highlight too. This actually starts all the way up in Alaska or northern BC and comes all the way down to Idaho. The interesting part, this was the first discovery that I would say has been made in Idaho that has that real copper porphyry potential. So although there was known copper mineralization, it never had what would be viewed as the world-class scale that in today's world is required. And I think that's why Hercules has caught so many people, one, by surprise, but two, also in a very positive manner, saying, wow, this could be a continuation of what we see in some of the world-class copper mines or copper projects all the way up in BC. And I think the nice part too, and I've spent some time actually working down in Chile and Peru myself over my career. The interesting part about this part of Idaho, the belt, or the dubbed Hercules copper trend, it's only around 50 to 60 kilometers, kind of northeast to southwest. So when you're talking about large copper trends in the world, I mean, Chile north to south is 4,000 kilometers by itself,
Yeah.
right? So this is a very tight window, but if you've got a tight window and a very compact scenario with multiple porphyries, or if there is a potential porphyry cluster, that could be extremely meaningful because it isn't wide spanning. It doesn't go all the way up the state or the United States as a whole. It's in a very tight window here in the southwestern part of Idaho.
Yeah, and you know, Brandon, having been in the mining business for 30 years now, something that I've always noticed about new discovery areas is that sometimes they're not considered prospective for what's found. They're considered to be in the wrong kind of rocks. And Hercules has certainly proved that they're in the right kind of rocks for a porphyry system. And again, I like the fact that, you know, you guys went into an area where there was known geology and historical drilling historical mining, and the structural story is there as well. So you've checked off all the boxes. And I know there's a lot of interest in the area because that discovery, like any major new discovery, is going to start a staking rush. Chris at Hercules has already talked quite extensively about the staking rush that's going on there. So I think you guys have been very selective about what you acquired. And I think that's a good way to go about attacking a new discovery area.
No, exactly. I mean, I think the rocks need to drive you to the ground. And I think that's the most important, not the other way around.
Right.
If it wasn't the right structures and host rocks, and if we didn't see so many encouraging things in the field, we probably wouldn't have gone and staked the ground just for the sake of having ground in the district. But all signatures were extremely positive as we spent more time reviewing historical databases, reviewing historical literature, spending a lot of time in the field over August and September, even pre-discovery hole. So we were already spending time up there in the field, significantly looking at
So why,
how
Brandon, did you get a feeling that something was happening?
we just liked this part of Idaho when we wanted to add to our presence, Allan. I think we were very happy with Nutmeg Mountain, but as you can appreciate, I mean, the town of Weiser, where we have our office and core yard, there's maybe 3,000, 3,500 people. We enjoyed working here. We've built over the last 24 months, I'm sure similar to Hercules, some what I would say is very deep-rooted relationships, and we've got a lot of support from individuals in this part of the world. And I think there's no better place to be looking for mines when you have that type of support. And I think that's the most important is we are going to be supported as we advance Nutmeg Mountain, but also as we advance Zeus. And we wanted to actually look to see how we could further take advantage of that. And when I look at a project, I mean, that support community, environmental, from a permitting standpoint. It's very important in today's world. And I think as Idaho goes, there's not very many better places to be than this little pocket here. I think the southwestern part of the state, it reminds me a heck of a lot of Nevada. It's very dry, it's arid, you've got really nice terrain to work with, which is what you want to see, where other parts of Idaho, I'd say, are probably a little bit less favorable. So we wanted to definitely take advantage of that. And I think last comment there is I think Idaho overall has been underexplored. I think if you mentioned Idaho 10 years ago, a lot of people would probably view it as a bit of a no-fly zone. Whether that's correct or incorrect, I think, there was that predisposed notion of Idaho as a state that in the last couple of years, you're starting to see, nice positive momentum build with some of the other projects that are advancing, but it has not been viewed as a Nevada per se, right? And I think that's slowly changing. And if you can be a first mover like we have or like Hercules has, I think that's a great way to leverage that and have the right infrastructure in place.
It's kind of a full circle for me because in the 1990s, I worked on a project that was called the Queen of the Hills mine in Idaho. And so I know the geology there is quite exceptional. So I've always been interested in it for 25, 30 years. And I did some homework on that Nutmeg Gold trend. And that's got some similarities to what Hercules was initially looking for on the Hercules project, which was epithermal veins that were in the model of how they form is a porphyry is driving the mineralization into the epithermal veins. And they were quite focused on that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Nutmeg?
Yeah, Nutmeg's a really interesting project. I mean, when you look at what's been defined to date, that deeper epithermal vein system has never really been targeted. So this project, even when we acquired it, it had 70,000 meters of drilling. The average hole depth was 70 meters.
Oh my gosh.
So it was just scratching the surface. They were very much staying in the sandstone unit, which had a nice disseminated oxide or heap leachable ore body. But that deeper system, which in a low sulfidation system, you would see it, what's called the boiling zone, which tends to happen, let's call it between 300 to 600 meters, depending on the faults in the structures, hadn't really been tested. So I think from that standpoint, now we've updated the resource at Nutmeg Mountain. We have 1.3 million ounces in the heap leachable category, sticking out of the ground effectively with less than 1-to-1 strip ratio. And that potentially slightly deeper part of the system, the epithermal vein system, has never really been tested. So that project for us is twofold. We see a lot more growth laterally at surface because of the land situation to add quick oxide heap leach ounces, but there's still that prize at depth, that high grade epithermal system. So I think there's a lot more work we're going to be doing at Nutmeg Mountain this year as well. And there's almost too many targets to test, right? So I think we're just trying to hone in and figure out capital allocation, where we want the dollars to go to add the most value. And I think it's going to be a twofold strategy there. It's going to be both near surface, trying to expand the oxide heap leach, growing it from 1.3, 1.5, 2 million ounces plus. That's a very good position to be in for a heap leach project. There's not many out there with that scale, but we still have, no, not in oxides, exactly. But we still have the prize at depth.
And that really interests me because I don't know if you're aware, Brandon, but I live in Mexico, and all the big mines here, 25% of the silver ever produced worldwide has come from Mexico, and it's all come from low sulfidation epithermal veins. And what is really, you have to understand as an investor in these kind of projects is the vertical zonation of grade. So as you get deeper into the system, you're looking for the boiling zone. Think of it like a pot of water. When it's boiling, the water that's bubbling and everything, what's above that, the bubbles that are above that is what you're looking at in the oxides. But below that is really where you get the feeder for what you get the right boiling temperatures to create the deposits that are great mines. And speaking of those kind of deposits in Nevada, not too far away from you, a real company maker for the Franco-Nevada, the royalty company, was their Midas mine in northern Nevada that was a spectacular high-grade epithermal vein system that had high grades and low costs. And that's what makes these mines down here in Mexico so prolific, is because the cost is low to mine them, but the grade is very high. You look at something like a Las Chispas that's owned by Silvercrest. They're mining silver equivalent, it's gold and silver, but they're mining at about $13 an ounce of silver, and they're selling it for over $25 an ounce. This creates a tremendous amount of free cash flow, and that's why when they went into full commercial production, they had $100 million in debt from building it. By the end of the third quarter of full commercial production, they paid off all the debt and built up cash and bullion, silver and gold, over $100 million in 3 quarters of full commercial production. And something else that people might not know is one of the great discoveries that's happening right now in Nevada is in the Walker Lane Trend, where Anglo has found a similar story to you.
Exactly.
A multi-million ounce oxide gold sitting above an epithermal vein system. So the Nutmeg project alone has my attention.
No, exactly. And I think that's the interesting part of the story. Now, I don't like to confuse people who are more new to the story with all the catalysts, but there are that many. I mean, even when you look at this resource we put out, Allan, I mean, you've got over 1 million ounces in indicated, very tightly drilled. The resource is extremely consistent, but I like to point people to the high grade core, because that is another factor with these type of projects, as you mentioned with Las Chispas and Silvercrest. Your first 3 to 5 years of a potential mine life, of course, we still need to get to that stage. Want to caveat that, but it looks like all indications are pointing that you've got over 640,000 ounces at close to 1 gram per ton, keep leachable, less than 1-to-1 strip ratio. Wow. And I think when you look at the section here, Allan, the warmer colors outcropping at surface effectively describe that. And it's going to be very interesting as we continue to advance. We obviously have a lot more to do in terms of growing the resource. We think this thing could grow to easily multi-million ounces very quickly here in the next 12 to 18 months. But you have this very nice high grade core at surface,
which could be a starter pit that
there. Exactly. So you start digging rock and you are in cash flow effectively.
But then you gotta be excited about drilling deeper, because if you're in that disseminated portion of a system, you know, if you got that kind of grade at the surface in oxides, you got to ask yourself, well, where did that come from? And what kind of grades drove that into the oxide zone?
Exactly. There is a system here. It just needs to be vectored in on. And I think that's what's also important, as I touched on earlier, 70,000 meters of historical drilling. The average hole depth was only 70 meters.
So they were only interested in the oxides.
Exactly. And when we went through the historical database, only 5 holes were drilled more than 200 meters on the entire project package. Wow. Right? So if you can appreciate, there's a lot of ground that we have nice historical geophysics from. We've obviously done some structural and surface mapping ourselves. And I think a little bit more of that surface work is going to help us vector in on potentially that higher grade prize at depth. And that is part of the program.
With such widespread gold mineralization in the oxides, you're getting me really excited about that part of the story, because I'll tell you, you look at something like First Majestic, one of their best performing mines is actually to the immediate south of Las Chispas. It's called Ermitaño. And Ermitaño, the epithermal veins came right to surface. but it's brecciated. So you've got mixture of the quartz and the country rock. And so they sampled that and they got really low grade. And, but they poked a couple holes, 100, 150 meters down. They caught the vein, 1/2 ounce per ton.
It
Gold.
can be exceptional when you're in the right zone and if you have the structures intact, which I think Nutmeg definitely has all of those signatures.
And you've got evidence that there could be an entire cluster of epithermal veins, because there again at Las Chispas and Ermitaño, you've got a corridor of 40 veins going right through those two mines. And with that much widespread gold mineralization in the oxides, you know, you've got a hell of a target sitting underneath that to go after as well. You tag a few holes and cut across an epithermal vein system, that alone could be a company maker.
Agreed. Yep.
So, but now you've really rolled up your sleeves in Idaho, and you've got this this new claim that is kind of a lookalike to the success that Hercules Silver has had.
Exactly, but that's only Idaho. We're not even mentioning our Nevada project, which is also something that stands out, Allan, and it's something that I think your audience would be well worth, you know, getting a bit of information on now. I mean, this was a project that we actually acquired from one of your regular guests, Mr. Rob McEwen and McEwen Mining. So McEwen is still a large shareholder of ours and a very supportive shareholder. This was an asset that they weren't actively working on, and we knew the McEwen group from some past dealings, and we were able to get our hands on this asset back in 2020. And I think as advanced exploration projects go, this one is no different than what we're seeing in Idaho at Nutmeg Mountain, and why we're excited about Zeus. You've got this very much emerging district in Nevada.
You're in another area I know something about, Salina. I've been following
okay,
Salina.
Chad and the team at Salina and Ridgeline.
Right.
Yeah, no, we've done a really nice job with Salina and then drilling out that CRD system. And I think
it's
the
right
interesting part,
beside the porphyry that
exactly, the Butte Valley porphyry, which Freeport is drilling, and pretty interesting. And this slide will be getting updated, but now Freeport has surrounded us to the west.
Oh,
They've
wow.
completely staked our western boundary. So you've got Freeport drilling this Butte Valley porphyry. You've got Ridgeline and their CRD system. They have started to look at it from a porphyry lens or a potential copper lens. So we'll see how that evolves over the coming months. And then you've got a stockwork type system, but Centerra Gold actually also recently highlighted some copper porphyry potential at Cherry Creek. So you've got effectively 4 active drilling projects, and we're smack dab in the middle of this 20-kilometer fault structure on a project that,
Well,
I'll flip to the next
actually,
slide.
not only is there a fault cutting right through your property, there's a parallel one that goes right to Butte Valley.
Exactly.
So you got a lot of great ground there, Brandon. You guys have done a really admirable job of going after really good projects and getting that one from McEwen Mining and having them as a big supportive shareholder is great as well.
Exactly. Yeah, no, so it's an exciting time for the company. Like I said, I think the gold projects we have, I think, are really the intrinsic base layer of our value. They are a little bit more advanced. They're near term or current resources in both Idaho and Nevada. And I mean, Allan, I haven't really touched on, but we strongly believe we can get this to 3.5 million ounces plus combined between the two. So as oxide heap leach platforms go in the Western US, there's not many out there of that size and scale. And with an oxide project, having that size and scale and grade and low strip ratio allows you to separate from the pack. But
And
obviously,
Brandon, you know, not a lot of people understand this about Nevada, but there was historically over the last 40 or 50 years, those oxide deposits were what made up all the mines. But they've pretty much been, you know, found, the ones that outcrop, and in the case of Anglo, they've found something that is kind of under a little bit of cover. But what's happening now is that they've got to start transitioning to the sulfides below, which means that there is going to be a hunger amongst mining companies for multi-million ounce oxide deposits, because that's where they've made all their money in Nevada for 40 or 50 years. So, you know, those oxide targets are great targets to have as well, or projects to have as well.
Definitely. And an oxide project at surface does not mean that you don't have a sulfide project at depth. That opportunity is still there. So I think it's
Or an epithermal vein system sitting underneath it that juiced it up.
exactly.
Wow, great combination. So let's get back to your newest acquisition, because I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this acquisition due to the enthusiasm for Hercules Project. So what's your next steps? You've acquired a big land package. It's in the right kind of rocks, has the structural story, has historical mining. What are you going to do next, Brandon?
We have full intent to advance this project as rapidly as we can. I think there's the initial surface geology that any company would want to go through, being surface mapping, some of the rock chip and soil sampling, and then some of the surveys that have obviously been great vectoring tools for Hercules. So we've got plans to commence those immediately. And I think thereafter, or in parallel, we're obviously doing a lot of work and sort of front end loading what you'd like to see from a permitting standpoint, so we can get in here and try and drill some of the best targets that we identify. So we want to move quick. I think the interesting or nice part here too, Allan, we've got a mix of land tenure. Some of the land will be able to drill sooner than others because of the permitting situation, but I think that also creates the opportunity. A lot of ground as you move further east and a little bit further north, it's all in US Forest Service. Okay. And US Forest Service ground is a little bit more challenging to permit. I think that's a well-known fact in the Western US that we actually have a blend of patented claims. We actually picked up some leases on patented mining claims, which are grandfathered, which allow you to drill very quickly. We've got some private ground, and we have Bureau of Land Management and US Forest Service ground. So I think the land tenure blend creates a nice opportunity there. And yeah, like I said, we have plans to start with that kind of first phase of surface geology for the first kind of, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks, but then it's to ramp up very quickly and get ready for drill targeting and drilling.
Well, because you're running almost on a parallel path as Hercules, because I think they're about 4 to 8 weeks away from starting their drilling.
Yeah, just this part of the world from a weather standpoint, rule of thumb, depending on the seasonality and how bad the winter is, I'd say you're sort of targeting May 1st for drill start. I think that's a reasonable position to be in. It's not to say you can't drill here year round, but it can be cost prohibitive and create unnecessary headaches. So I think it's kind of that May 1st start it tends to be a good position.
So you're going to get in there and roll up your sleeves on the surface work, prepare for drilling.
Yeah, that's the plan. Exactly.
Okay, well, that's a heck of a combination you have there, Brandon, and I'm not surprised because I've known your father for many years, and I guess he wasn't able to dissuade you from getting into the mining business, but he's given you a good education there, Brandon.
Appreciate that, Allan. Yes.
Yeah, I've had a lot of good experiences with your father over the years. And I can see his influence in the quality of the projects you've acquired.
No, 100%. And I think, as groups go, if you will, and, I'm relatively younger CEO, but I do think our business needs some fresher blood blossoming. I think it's important to see. I think our industry as a whole, and, maybe a bit more of a philosophical comment, but I think it's nice to have the experience and gray hair blending with a bit of youthful energeticness. And I think that's what we built with NevGold. If you look at our board of directors, over 150 years of combined experience, and a lot of that is in the Western US. And I'm talking about little things that allows you to differentiate. We have drill rigs on standby. Our assay lab turnaround time is 3 to 4 weeks because of our relationships. All of those little things start adding up and they create a more efficient business. And I think that's how we really operate. We've got a bit of youthful energeticness at the executive level, but there's so much wealth and experience at the board level. And it's beautiful to see that combination where you bang ideas and brainstorm off of each other, and it creates a very much a positive synergistic experience in the process. And that's really how we've kind of formed the company and how we've operated the past 2.5 years since we publicly listed.
Well, it comes down to projects and people and money. How's the money?
Projects, people, a plan, and money. I'm a big 3P guy, Alan. I think a lot of companies don't always have a plan. I think they talk about the people and the projects, but I think you always need to have a plan.
Yeah.
Let's run our industry like a real business. Let's have objectives. Let's understand budgets and actually having targets to achieve that budget with. And I think that's what we definitely differentiate as well, that we always like to have, whether they're internal resource targets or a plan behind each dollar raised. And speaking of the dollars, we currently did recently, did a 2.35 million financing. And that was a 32-cent financing, Alan, no warrant this past January. So we did not have a warrant attached. And I think that was a great signal to the market. We participated heavily ourselves. Our board supported it with total 250,000 Canadian of the 2.35 million. So we have a lot of skin in the game, but we also continue to write checks. And I think what that financing did is it gave us the right runway to start phasing out some of this news at Zeus and seeing how things evolve. And it actually gives us the ability to advance Zeus, but also start to potentially drill Nutmeg Mountain again as well. So we're sort of easing into it. We're just being mindful post that raise and letting the Zeus stuff now be released. But I think it's going to be a very exciting next couple months for the company.
That's awesome, Brandon. And I'm really glad you came on as a sponsor, because what I like to do is I like to keep telling the story as it evolves, because I really think that investors need to understand what you're doing to be more than just, buying because you heard a story. You want shareholders that are in there because they understand the story and the work you're doing, which gives you the time and the funding to do that work. It's not sort of a fly by the seat of your pants sort of situation when you have that kind of support. And sounds like you definitely got that kind of support.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think as we get on the show more, Alan, and we appreciate what you do for the business and the sector, and it's great to be on for the first time today, but we look forward to providing regular updates as we start to have more and more news come out over the coming months.
That's awesome, Brandon. I love doing these interviews, and I love seeing exploration work and talking about it. So we'll definitely do a bunch of them again. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to close it off and we can chat at the other end.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for the time.
So there you go, folks. NevGold is a exploration company with a great group of assets. This newest one, I think, is going to catch a lot of attention because of the similarities to Hercules Silver, and Hercules Silver has caught the imagination of the exploration investor world by storm. And they've gone about it in acquiring ground in what I think is going to be a big staking rush. They've gone to the right rock packages, the right structural story, and where there has been historical mining. But, and this is a big but, that Nutmeg project really has my attention because of all the experience that I have in epithermal vein systems. And to have a resource like that in the oxides above the epithermal vein system below, that's a lot of ounces in the oxides. And you got to ask yourself, well, where did that come from? And if that's an epithermal vein system sitting underneath that, this could be a company maker on its own, let alone the Zeus project that they just acquired and the stuff that they have down in Nevada. I've done a whole lot of homework, and it's amazing that, all of these projects are in areas where I've done my homework, and it's a testament to the way they go about acquiring quality. As always, I want you to understand that NevGold is a sponsor. They pay me for that sponsorship. I will add that, I everything I look at, whether it's a sponsor or a pick, they all fall through the same filter that I've developed over the last 30 years in this business. Has to be about quality, it has to be about good projects, or I won't talk about them or have them as a sponsor. And so, but be aware, there is a bias there that you should be aware of. I do not make buying or selling recommendations. It's important for you to do your homework, speak with your financial advisor before making any investment decision. And I'm merely trying to bring to my audience ideas and companies that they can do their homework on. And I highly recommend that you do the homework on NevGold, because I think they've got a bright future in the immediate horizon. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.